Welcome to Mighty Married Moms. Join us at our kitchen table twice a week as the Mighty Married Moms, Debbie, Linda, Wendy, invite spectacular guests to weigh in on staying sexy, vibrant, and healthy, building marriages with soul-satisfying connection, raising happy, healthy, successful kids. Conversations with Mighty Married Moms will bring you closer to the life you really want. Episode 28.
Well, that was good.
That was excellent.
Dr. Corey Allan from Texas with his simplemarriage.net and his sexymarriedradio.com. I might have that mixed up, but he is top drawer. I really like what he has to say, especially about how marriages work on us. Did you get that from him?
Yes, that was really, it's just so important. I don't think very many people talk about marriage from that perspective. Like you were saying earlier, it's about what can you do for me, bring me flowers, you don't bring me flowers anymore, you don't do this. So it's to blame the other person, where he really comes from the approach of, to be a better partner or to have a successful marriage, you have to be a better partner and continually work to be the best partner you can be. And that will, your spouse will respond.
Yeah, it's much more impactful. And just that whole philosophical outlook that it's not there for us as a gift, it's for us to become better human beings. I just really like that. There are a lot of researchers who would agree with him on that, Harville Hendricks being one. A lot of people talk that same thing, that that we become more of the human beings we were meant to be through the, as he said at the end, the crucible of marriage.
Yeah, it's a really different lens. Excuse me, because we talked a little bit at the beginning about the romantic lens, and then this, I don't know how would you describe this other lens? It's a more realistic one, clearly.
Yeah, and I think it's a more of a personal development lens, and we look at I still think that we look at marriage as being something that we receive and absorb, rather than like, okay, now that I'm married, I have an opportunity to become more of the Wendy that I've always needed to be or should be or aim to be, that it really is a stepping on the gas of my own personal development. And I really like that notion. As you said, it's not, we don't talk about that much. It's not viewed that way. It's a good lens.
You know, it's interesting. One of my mother's favorite sayings when I was growing up is, God wanted us to learn how to get along with all kinds of people, which is why he put us in families. Oh. And in some respects, that's talking about siblings. But, you can kind of take that between the partners, too, because ideally you would marry somebody who has some similar interests to you, but they're not going to be exactly the same all the way along, and so you have to figure out, where are my interests going to take precedence in this particular circumstance, and I'll make sure that they take precedence for you in your circumstance. And it's a bit of a dance, actually.
Right. Absolutely, absolutely. And I like the word that he used, that marriage is co-created.
Yes.
And I think that's a really, really important word, that you're co-creating. And I don't know about you two, but my experience has always been that, with any relationship, but I think the deeper you go into any commitment to anything, particularly a marriage relationship, the further you go in, the longer it lasts, the more you discover, the more exploration you do, the deeper you go. It's just a more fulfilling experience. And I find that I really believe, I've always believed that if you fall in love with somebody, there's that spiritual connection and it never goes away. And you maybe cycle away from it, you have problems, kids come along, whatever it is, but you're always able to cycle back around, and you can still experience that in love feeling again if you are working hard at being the better you.
Right. Yeah, the practicalities of life can overshadow, and I think there's that connection that he made of the child-centric society that we all live in, and that I think you brought it up, Debbie, the part about there you are driving off to college, and one person, maybe both, have it in their mind, as soon as that dorm room bed is fixed and made up, and we get back in the car, I'm laying it out. This is done. We're done. And it's we all. I think we could all speak to personal experience with that, not in our own lives maybe, but our friends or family members. We've seen it. Painful. And so, how did you read what Dr. Allan was saying vis-a-vis that? You asked him, how do you prevent it?
He's absolutely correct, and that was kind of a leading question, I suppose, in asking about the preparation, because I really, as a parent coach, that's one of the things that I need to do is help couples not only with the relationships with their kids, but also with the relationships with each other. And a lot of parents really struggle with that whole, I've done myself. Our youngest is a freshman in college as we speak, and all of last year, my husband and I kept talking about what are we going to do next year when he's gone. And so there's a mental preparation. But long before that, as Corey was saying, you need to lay the groundwork by saying, this is our time together. We're going to make sure that we spend time together, and we need to let our kids know that it's important for us to spend time together. And my husband and I have worked at that over the years. We have made sure that we've had date nights. Maybe it wasn't every week, but a couple of times a month, as much as we could. And, it's cheap. You go... When there was such a thing, we would go to bookstores and look at books.
When there was such a right, yeah, right.
And eventually we just got to the point where we would take the dogs for a walk in the woods, and that was we would try to do that every Saturday or nearly every Saturday. Mm-hmm. So that was our weekly commitment to spend time with each other, even though we have kids. And I'll just speak from personal experience. It's absolutely critical that you do that. Otherwise, when they leave, you don't know who the other person is that you're married to.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you're not doing anybody any favors with this kid-centric society. And I could go on and on about that, but I have a couple of guests in mind to bring on to speak to that more fully, because I just see that as a real problem. And the way
it's not good for kids either.
No, like he said, they have that test for some HR departments have a test where they say, if this is the kind of family you were brought up in, where it's a very kid-centric, we're not going to hire you because you don't have the problem-solving skills. Mm-hmm. I really want to find that study. That is fascinating. Really, it's fascinating. Yeah. And I couldn't help but think about you, Debbie, in your work with parent coaching. And you've said it all along. How can parents help their teens or their kids to really develop problem-solving skills? And he just laid it right. He just laid it right out there that it's symptomatic in a lot of ways, and our kids aren't fit for taking care of themselves fully if we're not helping them solve problems.
Right.
Fascinating.
Right.
Yeah. I really like what he had to say on that too.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I was challenged by, I got to say, is I don't know, as much as I'm pro marriage and relationship, and that's the primary relationship in the home, there's something about shutting the door and saying to your kids, leave us alone, even though he said there's nothing exciting going on in there necessarily. But I guess just doors shut and saying, we're in here by ourselves and we have our own special relationship and you're not part of it. I don't know, that made me feel a little bit bad.
I think that is very important.
Do you? Okay.
Absolutely. Very,
Really?
very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kids need to know that you have that special relationship. I think it's important for them to see that and see that that you're valuing it and you're important. I think that's important for them to model. Just like I said, my husband says, I think the first time I heard him say it, I thought, is that okay? And then I thought, wow, it felt so good when he told my son, that's my wife you're talking about, when my son was being fresh, and it felt really, my son got his attention, and it certainly made me feel like, wow, I felt very special, sort of internalized it in a nice way. So I think that's really important.
And I don't think that we've ever shut the door in a literal sense, but in a figurative sense in terms of, our weekly date and making sure that we spend time together. So there were times when we would shut the door. Usually it was to talk about, money and stuff.
Yeah, I know, right? That's usually what it is for us.
Yeah. But that's a different...
Utilitarian, but still.
Yeah. Right, yeah, really.
We don't want you to see how bad that bank account really is, kids.
No.
Right.
But figuratively, we would shut the door by taking our time out and going on dates. And the other thing is, we were very clear with our kids that it's very important for us to go on vacation together. Mm-hmm. And we didn't get to every year go for a long weekend, but at least every other year we would go away for a long weekend up to Montreal or just someplace we could drive and get to pretty easily. And then probably every 3 to 5 years we'd go on a week-long trip. We're fortunate that both Arch and I have parents who were able to help us with the kids while we're gone.
Yeah.
Not everybody is able to do that, and I totally understand that. But if you can find somebody reliable whom you trust to take care of your kids, go away.
Right.
You need to actually get out of the house for more than one day and more than one night. So it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the interesting thing about, here we are, 2015, the prevalence of the internet and how the internet can be a marriage counselor.
Yes.
Right?
You can find anything.
His content, his blogs, and I'm sure he's got YouTubes out there or whatever. it's just interesting to me how we utilize technology, and the fact about an app to help me with my real flesh and blood relationship. Hold on, honey, hold that thought. Let me check my app. I mean, it's just, so I have to go kind of see what these apps are that he's cultivated or curated on his site.
Right.
But it's kind of an interesting thing, like, what would it be? Take a deep breath, rethink those words. I mean, I'm just interested.
Well, I think it would be similar to reading a book or reading a blog. It's just another format, where he was saying that people are more inclined to read a book or read a blog or do something like that before they would actually go to somebody formally for counseling. So
6 years.
Yeah.
Was that a shock to you guys?
6 years. That was a shock to let something fester for 6 years without trying to get some help.
What do you think that's about? If you had to unpack, like, why would you take 6 years to kind of cop to, honey, we need to deal with this? Either 6 years to the other person, like we have a problem, or 6 years to let's go tell somebody else.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's unclear. It's unclear. And I would actually encourage our listeners and our viewers to chime in on this. If you're somebody who's waited for 5 or 6 years to get help, why did you wait so long? What were you afraid of? I can only surmise. And so my guess would be we don't want to. Here it is. I'm afraid. I put myself in that person's position, and I think to myself, I don't want people to think that I've made a bad choice. It makes me look bad.
Yeah.
Now, I could be totally wrong on that, but that's my guess.
Yeah.
Or you just sort of think it'll work itself out and go away.
Yeah.
I think that you don't maybe sometimes understand the points in a marriage where you have to work really hard. And you just kind of want it to go away and it'll be fine and we shouldn't have to.
Or you think it's a stage.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with kids in particular and you're so focused on the kids.
So when they go away, it'll all magically.
And maybe when the kids change into another stage, our marriage will change also, and maybe it doesn't. So I'm not really sure.
Maybe there's still, if you feel that you have to go to a counselor, it means things are really bad. So you don't really think
Stigma.
they're that bad. Right?
Oh,
It's
yes.
stigma, right?
And I loved, Corey, thank you so much for saying this. Everybody needs a therapist or a coach at some point in their lives.
Yeah.
I saw a therapist once for a while. I've got like 3 coaches I'm working with right now on a variety of things. There's no reason that any of us should feel like we have to go through life by ourselves.
Right.
Why reinvent the wheel? If there are people who've already solved the problems that you're dealing with, get their help. Cut your learning curve in half, if not even more.
What he said about the preventative, I loved how he put it in economic terms.
Yeah.
If you put some money into prevention and enrichment in relationships or marriages, put the money and the time in, it's going to be low money. But if you're 6 years in, you haven't acknowledged it, and you have to go to the intensive care unit, it's going to be big bucks.
That's true.
In time, in effort, in pulling, okay, if we need to see this therapist and the insurance doesn't cover it or whatever. Very economic terms. I really, or divorce. It's the impact of divorce on women, the amount of economic downslide that happens for women
Tremendous.
is huge.
Yeah. Which is why a lot of women stick with a marriage even when they don't want to.
Yes, but did you know most divorces are initiated by women? And I think that women are, I'm not saying that they don't know, but they're willing to go through the tumble down because it is significant.
Yes.
It is significant. And it just is another reason to pause or to think about going to the primary care doctor before you go to the ICU doctor. However we want to take that analogy, but there is some serious blowback to divorce.
But you have to have both partners be willing to work.
Sure.
I have some family members who have struggled with their marriages and have ended in divorce. And,
Right.
If the partner's not willing to work, then you can't do it by yourself.
Right.
So,
But there's a lot you can do by yourself by virtue of what he was talking about in the beginning, which is
change your mindset.
What am I doing? Yeah, change your mindset.
Change your mindset. We were talking about that in between, talking about the mindset that you approach your marriage with is critical for determining how much effort you're willing to put into it on a daily and a weekly basis, and then what you expect to get out of your marriage at the end.
Yeah. And that's a shift. That's a shift, I think, from, again, what society teaches and what we're always learning about. It should just be a fountain that keeps on giving and giving and giving because I've fallen in love. And then when you get a few years in or certain things happen, you go, this is not what I expected and what I want. We haven't really gotten, and that's why I do the work that I do. That's why I'm interested in marriage education, is because why do you think that you're going to have a six-pack abs if you don't do the work?
Yeah.
Why do you think you're going to have a marriage that's strong and healthy if you don't do some? And when I say work, I'm not talking about roll up your sleeves and go to weekend workshops every 5 minutes. I'm just talking about normal, everyday sit-ups, that kind of thing. Or
takes a little effort.
Yeah, there's some things that you can do that feed and water and nurture a relationship. And we're very we're all women, we have children. We're very open to reading as many books as we can on parenting. Oh, my boys in junior high. Let me look up how boys do in junior high. Let me talk to other women or people about boys in junior high. We're very open, but very closed-lipped about, I don't understand. We used to have such fun in bed, and now it's kind of, things are not like it used to be. And
at least in our circles. I think there are some circles where it's a lot more open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From what I've read, there are some circles where it's a lot more open. And again, I would invite our listeners and viewers to chime in on this if you find yourself in friend circles where sex life is a lot more...
Well, sex, anything.
But anything.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
Or we're having money problems. I'm not talking about my money problems because... Debbie just bought a BMW, so I'm certainly not going to tell her that I can't afford a used Jetta. Whatever. You did not. No. But you know what I mean? Like, there's just some sort of quietness about marriage and relationship, the husband-wife bond, that we're a little bit more reticent to seek help on. Maybe not the bedroom stuff. I agree with you. I think women are pretty cool about talking about sexual stuff, but we're much more open and willing to share our peccadillos around child rearing, I think, and seek help. And what did you do with your daughter who's developed pimples? How do you take it? Yeah. It's easier, I guess. I'm not sure why. Yeah. But so that's why marriage education for me which is a difference than he does counseling and therapy, and what I do with folks is, like I say, very basic core strength classes that are for everybody and anybody. But if you have particular stuff that you really need to work on, go to a Dr. Allan or a Corey. But with our programs, it's
Linda, I would love to know: are you very much aware of how relationships affect our health and what we can do in order, from our health standpoint, in terms of what we're doing to either help the relationship or in terms of helping ourselves and dealing with stress? And if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Absolutely. Stress, any kind of stress, but certainly I think relationship stress hits us the deepest, can really affect you on a cellular level. And we don't think of it that way. We don't think of it as a physical thing. But a lot of times when you're experiencing physical symptoms, whether they're headaches or whether they're neck and back pain, it can all be due to stress, even chronic illness, cancer, diabetes, all that. Believe it or not, part of that is symptomatic of stress. And I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and one thing that we learned there was we learned something called primary food and secondary food as far as your health is concerned. And primary food is your emotional health. And secondary food is actually the food that you eat. So your emotional health is actually more detrimental or positive to your physical health than actually the food that you put in your body.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it does change your cells.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What you're feeling changes your cells because it changes all of the chemicals and the hormones and you change the brain pathways.
Exactly.
It changes you completely depending on how you're feeling.
Exactly.
Talk about integrative health. Well, what a great program. When you just said they're talking to you in this nutrition school about the life of the emotions, the personal life, how it deeply affects that.
Yeah.
I was just at a class last week that was talking about skincare because I'm very interested in skincare, and the woman talked about the part that we wash as being, what is that called? Epidermis. The epidermis is the part that you put the soaps and the creams on and all that stuff. And the layer underneath is where the vitamins and collagen and good nutrition comes in. And the bottom layer, the what is that called? The endoderm, the bottom layer that holds it all up, is a lifestyle layer. That's where your sleep is. That's where your emotions are.
Oh, interesting.
So it's the same sort of a concept. I just learned this last week, and I hadn't put it together until you mentioned it. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating that our bodies and how we relate to life, how we relate to other human beings, how we relate to people is so much more integrated than we give it credit for.
Well, have you noticed when people do go through a divorce or somebody dies, how much they age, right? They age. You talk about it a lot. You know, it looks stressed. The skin looks stressed. More wrinkles. So it's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Like all the presidents age while they're in office because they have so much stress.
I know.
They all do.
Yeah, it's true.
You can see pictures of them.
Yeah, it's true. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
How rapid that happens.
Well, what kind of one or two takeaways here as we're wrapping up? What do we want to focus on and share with our viewers and listeners as final thoughts?
Well, I'm going to be sharing with people that I know, and for me, I really love what he was talking about with his flagship course, Marriage 911, for people who are bored, for people who have said, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Oh, that just cut me to the quick.
Yeah.
You know, because thank goodness I've never heard those words, and I don't feel them. Right. I'm glad to say. But I certainly, again, know people who have said that, and that's online 24/7, and you have access to him. So that's for me. That's a takeaway in my practice. For me personally, in my relationship, I guess for me personally, I would have to say that whole concept of reminding myself, what am I learning today as a result of being in relationship with my husband and in being in this marriage, and how can I be a better Wendy today or over the next?
How does this make me a better person?
Yeah.
I think that's
what am I learning?
And if we're more intentional about looking at our relationships, and not just marriage, but it could be other relationships too. I mean, even with our kids, how is this relationship making me a better person? What can I learn from this today that will help me be a better person tomorrow? And I think that was a key takeaway for me also.
Yeah, that was for me as well. And I like the word grace, approaching your relationship with grace and undeserved favor, and sort of thinking, what can I do not only to make myself a better person, but what can I do to give and show this other person how important that they are all the time. So I just like the word grace. That's a good word.
It's a good one to end on, too.
Yeah, it is. It is a good one to end on.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being with Mighty Married Moms.
You.
And we will see you again next week.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Mighty Married Moms. Tune in twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays to meet fascinating and inspiring guests who will help you create the life you've always wanted.
You can find these episodes and special gifts just for you at mightymarriedmoms.com, as well as a link to our Facebook community,
where we continue the conversation around the kitchen table. Please also help share the love by leaving a review on iTunes. We'll see you next time.